Yeah, very easy.
I know,
Thank you,
so
Becker.
you're welcome.
Stacy,
I
walked
thought
in just
about
in
it.
time.
Okay, good. I logged on my computer and I saw them.
I think our CFO had been in a town where the role was combined because the person, and so, and then Debbie's been here and does a great job. And so he was willing and able to take on the expanded responsibility. So I think you have to maybe think about things as to like, instead of being person specific, it may need to be thought about as, you know, if Sebby's not here in 20 years,
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
you know,
And that was the
you
case
might have to
last
have
time.
both
That
roles
was the case last
designated
time.
and then,
All right.
you know, the executive, you know, the first selectman and the bodies can decide if it's appropriate at that time to combine it or if it needs to be segmented out again.
All right, well, that's just food for thought. All right. What else has changed? That's a huge difference.
That's about it. Not much really has changed.
Okay. What would you like to see changed then, as opposed to what has been changed in your job?
Nothing really. The only thing is probably we should maybe review the tax elderly relief program,
The tax what?
the elderly tax relief program.
Okay. What would you recommend?
Well, we need to probably get together and look at it. What I've noticed is we started probably about 163 applicants that qualified back when we started the program.
Yeah,
We're down to about 29.
really?
Yes. So I'm not sure if it's the income requirements that need to be changed or,
Is that state required? Is there a mandate there? I don't remember.
no, this is a local option.
Oh, the local
Yeah,
option.
this is for the
Okay.
local, correct.
All right.
This has
No, I know
nothing
what
to do
you're
with the
saying,
state,
yeah.
yes, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think that that's in the charter, so it might be.
So maybe it should be included,
The,
or we should look at
It's-
whether
it
or
is in the
not.
charter.
to-
oh, I'm sorry, it's an order, I'm sorry, yes.
It's a town council ordinance. Well, that's something they could take up, sure.
Okay,
All right.
I'm
we
sorry
can-
about that.
No, that's all right. They're here to listen or to be advised. All right, do you want to speak to the appointment versus the, like everyone else here, the, what would you call it? We have that, the appointment versus the pleasure of the BOS. You serve under the pleasure of the BOS.
Well, the appointment, I've never been appointed. I was hired and you
Yes,
hired me.
Yes, I did.
And after that, I was never called in to get reappointed, whether it was every 2 years or 3 years, whatever the case was. So I think there, something needs to either leave it as an appointment and physically do an actual appointment every 2 years or change it to a hire.
So it would be every 2 years, or
I
it would have
believe
to
it's
be
every
a
2
higher?
years, the appointment. Just like building department.
Yeah. No,
Yeah, I know we
what-
do.
yeah.
Are you sure that it didn't come on the Board of Selectmen agenda? I know with the building person, we do that. So I'm guessing it's just you wouldn't necessarily be there and we just
That could be,
reappoint.
that could be the reason.
I would talk to, let me talk to Cheryl and find out. We have a lot of appointments, so I'm not sure, but that usually comes before the Board of Selectmen just to, as a reappointment. So let me ask Cheryl. I have no
Now,
idea.
would that be, that's consistent with everyone else?
Correct.
If it were appointed
Appointed,
by the
correct.
Board of Selectmen, and for some reason we don't know if it, I
And-
don't
and my-
remember it being appointed. I'm just, it
Well,
could be
he
wrong.
was hired and then.
That's different,
And then
yeah.
it was brought before the Board of Selectmen because the
That's right.
head of the building department has to, by state statute, has to be appointed every couple of years. I know we redid that.
It's every 2 years. I believe.
Yeah, so, yeah, we should look into that. I
Yeah,
don't know,
I
because
never
Cheryl
actually-
usually
Yeah,
brings
I
those
know, I
things
know,
before the
yeah, but
board.
I think you're right. When you're hired, you go before the Board of Selectmen, but that's different than being reappointed.
Right, but I'm saying the building, I know for a fact that the building
Has to
person,
be.
we
Yes.
did have him, and if it's in the charter, I'm assuming we should, or if it had gotten missed, then it's just a procedural thing that needs to be put back into.
You still do that for the chief building?
Mhm.
And who else do you do that for?
Cheryl's probably the expert. I have so many appointments that we go through. I can't.
Yeah. I
think
remember
of-
the building inspector. I'm trying to think of anyone else. I
I don't
can't
think.
recall.
I don't,
Because it's
Tax-
the
I
difference
believe
between, there's a
tax-
lot of appointments, but then there's the ones that are also.
Right, these are
paid-
employees that
yeah,
are paid
employees.
employees, but also appointments by state and,
I believe tax collector also.
yeah, so the two that,
But what it would be, if it was back to tax collector, it would be the same
I
for
believe I
both.
saw that in the
Either
charter.
way, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things that I noticed just in reviewing the charter is this particular position is appointed, but it's the one, it says that it serves at the pleasure of the Board of Selectmen, which seems to be a call out that's different than, there's like a general statute
Mhm.
that they're all, they can be, it's for cause if they're removed. And this one seemed to be different. I just
Mhm.
wasn't sure if there was some rationale for that or if it was just its own animal.
Interesting. There might be,
No,
there might be
I
a
thought
history
that, and
there.
I-
I can tell you, I mean, Stubby's treated like every other employee, so I don't know.
I
I don't know why
know.
there
I
would be
think
that
every-
distinction,
But
but
it should be, and I think Jarbo weighed in on this at one point too, and he
Yes.
said that that should be consistently applied.
And I believe
So-
that every town and city does
Didn't,
the
I
same
just,
thing.
this is easily 15 years ago, but I recall that he did weigh in, and I thought that would be the next change, and I guess it got missed the last time, but either way, yeah.
But I haven't checked whether the building, what that title is.
yeah,
Yeah.
chief building
I
official.
I'll check that one too. I didn't check and what that goes in the charter, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
this one just stood out.
All right, that caught my eye too. All right, what else? It isn't a lot. Anything else how do you feel about your commission being elected versus appointed? Or any of them being elected versus appointed?
Good. Actually, you bring a good point there. One of the requirements I will make is for the board to, if it's a new member, to at least go through the course of the Board of Assessment Appeals procedures. So they're aware of what's required, what's allowed by law in minutes. I mean, the Art Association does classes. It's a one-day class for a couple hours for all the boards around the state. So maybe they
That
should,
you have,
no, I mean the board.
the board has.
Correct.
And they come here or we send them to Hartford?
No, they actually, it's our association that does it.
Oh,
And
didn't we
they,
used to send them somewhere?
we used to send them,
Okay,
but
yeah.
wasn't required. And
Okay.
sometimes the travel was the reason why. So it kind of raises issues in regards minutes. How do you log the minutes? And the class goes through that, what's required by state statutes. And my thoughts were if that was required for the elected officials to at least a new member to attend that,
Mhm.
couple hours, it's once a year. Once you do it
What are we
once-
doing now? We're not doing that?
No. No.
Or, do they feel that they would benefit from it or they haven't weighed in?
Actually, one of the members did go, that is currently still there. I believe this is his sixth year. He did like it. He benefit from
He
it.
did benefit.
Yes, yes. It eliminates the assessor stating why a minute's taken this way when it's actually somebody saying, oh, it's a state law. It's required minutes are to be taken this way.
Yeah.
So it's
And
not
how
the
would we
assessor
handle
saying-
that if we did that internally? Would we have somebody that's,
Typically, I have the town attorney come in
okay,
and we go through about an hour
all right.
right before they start the meetings, of any questions, concerns they might have, what's required by law.
So you wouldn't do a separate hour or 2 hour?
No, eliminates us getting the town attorney involved.
Okay.
This is what the state laws are. You go for a couple hours on the class. You
All
know,
right.
but it's not required. you
Well,
know.
then we should be doing it, yeah, okay.
And that's the only drawback that I see, with the boards, with my board.
How do you feel about the number of members on the Board of Assessment?
It- I believe this was taken up before. We should require a fourth member as an alternative member.
Alternate
Alt
member?
member, yes.
And so you have not had an alternate for the last several years, or you have? Or we did?
I don't
yeah.
recall ever
Ever?
one.
I can't
And the issue
remember.
came sometimes where one member couldn't meet the meeting, had to recuse themselves, or sometimes two members had to recuse themselves. That
Oh,
could
yeah.
cause issues as far as their decision goes.
So it was really only one member left?
Correct.
That's not good.
Correct,
No.
correct. So that'll be maybe the next election to.
So you would
or-
add an alternate as opposed to increasing the size from 3 to 5? Because that's another option. I don't,
It's, either one will work.
it's always hard to find people, but,
That's the other issue.
but yeah.
It's during a revaluation, it's time consuming.
Oh, yeah.
They're there the entire month of March.
It wouldn't hurt to have 5 though.
No, it wouldn't.
And then you wouldn't have to have an alternate. Then you would have a voting
Correct.
block.
Correct.
Either way, but we could talk about that. Yeah.
Then you have to have 3 people there.
Yes, that's
Still
exactly.
majority, it doesn't matter.
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
You
it's
know,
still,
you
yeah,
expand the size, you
Yeah.
still have to have 3 people there.
yeah. Would you like to introduce yourself? Can you hear us?
Steve?
It's Steve.
Yes, this is Steve K. Sorry, I'm just,
Can
I'm
you hear
listening
us?
in.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, I can hear you. I can hear you. Can you hear
I just
me?
want to make sure you were on. Okay.
Yes, okay, thank
Penny
you.
Penny
Sorry.
didn't introduce herself either, so I will. You can introduce.
Burst into the middle of your conversation.
Well, I know, but since I had to interrupt for him, I'll interrupt for both of you. It's fine. Yeah, all right.
And the Board of Assessment Appeals is every 2 years elected, is correct. And that seems about right, opposed to, I think the state statutes say 4 years unless some other law overrides that, which I'm assuming our charter does, so I'm assuming 2 years was a purposeful.
It's possible. Yeah, most likely it's the town charter overrides the
Is
state.
2 years the right number? Should it be 4?
No, I think if you make it 4 personally, we'll have not enough people.
Really? You think?
Yes.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
it can work that way. It can work either way.
Yes.
Okay. And being appointed works fine. I think that in this case, it certainly does.
Yeah,
It
it most
wouldn't-
likely, it's like Deanna said,
Yeah.
probably was done automatically.
Yeah.
And, I just never looked at it or,
And I think it's more purposeful to recuse yourself in something like this because it's obvious. So I don't think we have the issues of conflict
correct.
like we do in other boards or commissions. Okay.
I also would comment that
By not being elected, Sebi doesn't live in town and
That's
know,
right.
you can get a wider pool of applicants. When you don't have an elected board, you can, sometimes there's more expertise that isn't in town in certain areas.
Oh,
so.
you can argue that on every single commission. It's where everybody's going to end up on it. But in this one, I think it's,
Well, I think this
Pretty obvious, yeah.
It's actually required that this position be not elected since like
Sometimes they are.
2010, it's something.
is it the trick?
I think the old
Some
days
can be
used to be
elected, some
that.
not.
Some towns, small towns might still do that.
Okay.
Part-time basis. They don't require full-time, so they might elect an assessor.
do they
That's
pay
what-
them as well?
Again, depending on their.
Do you know, Karen?
I don't know. I just know that in the state like changed in 2010 to make it so that you had to appoint
Appoint.
assessor as opposed to elect
Okay, versus collectors can be.
collectors. Maybe it can be either.
That's good, because I know a lot of towns are elected, which is interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's worked pretty well here. Not to say it always works in every commission, but I think in this one it has. It's worked well.
And that's interesting. You are also doing that collector role that's in the charter. And how long have you been doing that?
Since March,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
It's a big job.
yes.
To me, both. It's a big job.
The only thing I can do is accept cash or money or any payment, any type of payment. That's where the conflicts could show up.
Yeah, but we don't accept cash. do
No,
we?
no, meaning I can't.
No, I know, but I mean, we haven't anyway.
No, that's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
correct.
The town clerk accepts cash, right?
I believe so.
That's a point we need to look at. I'm not sure that's right anymore. Has the audit committee reviewed that? They have not. Okay, all right. Well, we will then. And I'm assuming that's in here or it is not. I don't know. I'll have to look it up. Yeah, the town clerk position. Okay.
Yeah, that's not in our group, but somebody looking at.
No, that's not my group either, but it should be looked at. All right, what else would you like to add or questions or any other business? Okay. We're good.
We're
All
good.
right, we're good. All right, anybody else? Any questions anybody would like to ask?
I just add, we're very fortunate to have Sebby.
Oh, gosh, yes.
Thank you. It's
That-
not easy.
It was a huge undertaking finding him. It was a huge one for your predecessor. And between the two of you, I just prayed. It was like a gift from heaven. It's not, you don't always find people like that. I mean, it's really hard. And Bob came in, his predecessor came as the top assessor in the state. We were able to get, and then he and we hired you and we thought this is just too perfect. So it worked out.
The thing I would add is that, like many of the roles you guys are going to be evaluating, the collector, assessor, and a few other roles, they're very skills-based job, not, like my job is a very, generalist role and board select, some of them are very generalist. And so you don't, if you're elected, it's, not a big deal. But for the roles where there's specific skills required to do the job, I would argue it is not a great idea to have that an elected position.
Well, yeah, you can argue skills always an issue.
Well, there's expertise
Expertise and background and
and rules and
Yeah.
rules. lots
And
of rules.
and I think this
Yeah.
in
Lots of rules.
this position's unique in that the state has actually said you have to have these certifications or
That should,
qualifications.
yeah, we
Right.
do, which it requires.
where did you get originally certified?
Assessor.
No, but in Hartford or in your old town or?
No, actually, I guess.
You got
here,
it, but
yeah.
that was here or it
Yeah.
was recertified?
I was actually, my background was from revaluation.
Yeah.
That's why Bob.
Yeah,
wanted me
that's
to
why
come in,
Bob
because we
wanted
were
you,
having
yeah.
those issues back then with
Yeah, we were.
the previous administration. And then Bob talked me into getting a certification and becoming an assessor. And so I pursued it.
But you had the revalve
Yes,
certification
certifications,
when
yes,
you
as a
came, and then
supervisor,
you
yes.
got the assessor.
Correct.
Sir, okay.
Correct.
All right. Yeah, you
In
have.
order to
no-
sign the ground list, you have to be certified as the assessor. You do require that for the state.
Give that to me again. You had
In
what?
order to sign the ground list, the yearly ground list,
Mm-hmm.
you have to be certified as an assessor by the state. So in other words, you can't just arbitrarily have somebody be an assessor and then sign it. They can't sign it. You have to be certified.
All right, but then that's why you got it your first year, because you were a reval certified and not an assessor certified, and you had to sign.
And
the
Bob was
grant.
still a year.
And Bob was here that
Yes.
year and he signed. And so then it was the next year,
Then I
right? Yeah,
got,
that's,
yes,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we don't have
Right.
anybody from the appeals board here, but that board does not have any specific qualifications
No.
to serve on
No.
that board.
No.
But you were talking, the training that you were talking about would be specific for them, for that board.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct,
okay.
correct.
And that's not a mandatory right now.
No, it's not mandatory.
What kind of things do they cover in that training? Do you know?
Well, the first thing is all the state laws, what's required by them, what's their duty, when timeframe, when they have to start, timeframe, when they have to finish. Board of Assessment Appeal, duties, they have to complete their duties, all the changes, no changes, no later than March, the end of March, if there's no 1-month extension given by the state. So whether there is 10 appeals or 600 appeals, they still have to finish by the end of March. So whether they have to meet on the weekends, so there's a lot.
It's all at once.
Correct, they have to do. As far as the education goes, it involves the minutes is the biggest thing that I see where they could use a little more training. Again, it's not the assessor saying or the town attorney saying it, it's a state law. Proper minutes. We had a situation where we had no minutes, or we had no change. What does that mean? So taxpayers were questioning it. So if they had proper training,
Mm-hmm.
maybe that would
Well,
kind
I
of.
think they definitely should have the training. I'm
they'll
surprised
force-
we're
they'll
not doing
force
that.
them
Yeah.
to-
Yeah.
But because it's not required, again, I
I know,
can't
but
tell,
still.
I
yeah.
can't tell them, oh, you know what, you have to go all the way to Fairfield or Hartford.
But not if we're doing it here. That's pretty easy.
Correct.
for them.
Correct.
What's their involvement in the residents that disagree with their evaluation and take it to the courts? What's their involvement after that time?
None.
Zero, it's just you.
It's just me, the
Okay.
town attorney.
All right, so then it's a very limited, controlled.
Correct. Per state law, their duty is to oversee all the values that the assessor signed. So technically, they override my values. But it has to be done through the appeals process.
And does the training give them like specific criteria for how they do that evaluation? Like how they decide if there's an override or anything, or is it just? That's
It's,
still-
the burden of proof is always on the taxpayer. So the taxpayer has to bring in the proof, whether it's comparable sold properties, whatever the case might be. But the burden of proof is on the taxpayer. So there is no, special training as far as things like that goes.
Okay.
So they bring their lawyer and they have
They
all
could
the
be their
burden
lawyer,
of proof,
correct,
and there's a meeting and you're there.
I'm not there.
You're not
Unless
there?
I'm there.
Aren't you-
The only time I'm there is when they call me. So in other
Yeah.
words,
They don't usually call you?
no, they do.
Oh, I thought.
If there's a
so.
specific appeal that they don't understand, it could be a commercial property, and they
Oh,
want to
yeah.
hear the commercial property appeal, technically they don't have to hear the commercial property appeal per statute.
Okay.
They send it straight to Superior Court. But sometimes if they do decide they want to hear it, they'll call me and say, "Seven, can you sit on it?" And we might ask you questions.
Okay.
Is it calmer? As far as, okay.
How much time does that take out of your job every reval?
Doing a reval, it's a lot.
It is a lot of
Uh,
time.
I want to say, as far as time goes, I got other stuff going on. You could probably say 30 hours
Really?
overall.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
That's a lot.
because everybody got revalued.
Mhm.
So, when you're looking at 300, 400 appeals, they have a lot of questions.
Have we increased in appeals or about the same?
Actually, no, we're going down.
We have commercial or residential or both?
Both.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, that's the market, the direction the market goes. Somebody appealing their house.
Do more people come in before the final appeal? In other words, just to come in to have it reassessed during that window?
During the revaluation window or
Yeah.
during the
Yeah, not a
Yes.
suit, but just as that
during
number
the
come in.
revaluation is typically when you get
Yeah.
500-600 people coming in.
Has that increased?
No,
It's about the same?
that stays steady. Because that's one of the things where it's easier. It's called an informal hearing.
All right.
And a lot of times the reval company will review it
Yeah.
and do another inspection.
Yeah.
The Board of Assessment bill could do the same thing, but they don't. They could request an inspection, but they accept photos or anything like that.
Is it better to have the objectivity of having the firm that we hired or not? I mean, do you think that that's,
Well, if I'm placing the value on it and I'm gonna be the one, I think kind of start getting into the conflict on that. I don't think it's for the reval company involved. Once they're done,
yeah, they're gone.
they're gone.
But do you think the resident prefers to have the reval company there as opposed to our Board of Assessment review if we were to expand that? It would save money if it was a volunteer group
For,
in the reval process.
to add the members there?
Yeah. Is
No,
that allowed?
no, that's where
The conflict?
Yeah,
Okay.
and well, no, the Board of Assessment appeal is the Board of Assessment appeal. That's directly coming from the state statute. The revaluation company technically doesn't even have to do informal,
They don't have to do what?
the informal hearings. The hearings,
Yeah.
basically, they're called informal hearings. So technically, they don't really have to do that. They could just send them straight to the board.
Yeah, they could. I think we've always had it that way, right?
No.
They can't send them directly to the board?
No. That's what I mean by is if we're doing a revaluation and, all right, we're done, everybody got their notices, but the revaluation company doesn't want to hold informal hearings, they don't have to. It's not required by statute for us to have informal hearings.
But
It's
we
just
do pay that when we issue the contract. to have them come in.
That's always part of the.
We've always done that.
Correct.
We
No,
don't have
everybody,
to do
everybody
that.
does,
Oh,
because
then
what
we
it
do.
does alleviates
Yeah.
extra work to the board.
That's right.
Now you have 600 going to the Board of
Yeah.
Assessment.
That's a lot.
Correct.
Okay.
So that's all. it
That's
does.
consistent though.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you'd like to tell us? This just gets better and better.
No.
Okay. Any questions, anybody? Karen, make sure
No,
you're
good, thank
covered. All right, we thank you.
Thank you.
Long drive home.
Yes, I'll be on the Mary.
I'm at the door if people are going to start leaving. All right. We're going to speak now to Kevin Monahan, our former first selectman, and this is Article 3 in the Board of Selectmen. And so he brought us some notes, so we will put that in our Bible.
Or do you want to go through?
You want to walk through them,
Yeah.
Kevin, or you
Sure,
want to, wait,
sure.
okay.
Why
Don't you, yeah.
Sure. So thanks for having me and thanks for doing this.
Oh, turn on your microphone, sorry.
Uh, Again, thanks for having me. Thanks for doing this. It's an important process and I fully support what you're doing. So I served for 3 years on town committees before I served 4 years on the town council and 6 years as first selectman. So my remarks are kind of based upon my perspective, both as first selectman and from the town council point of view. Although New Canaan is a small town by population, I think it requires a more modern approach to local governance. Greenwich and Westport have evolved to a quasi-mayor model. So I recommend strengthening the role and authority of the first selectman. New Canaan has a weak first selectman compared to Westport and Greenwich. All town employees, and perhaps I should have said all town managers, but should report to the first selectman. You can look at the Westport and Greenwich charters, and for example, in Greenwich and Westport, the first selectman is the police commissioner and is the fire commissioner. And I recommend that you consider adopting the Westport or Greenwich type description of first selectman responsibilities and authority. Our charter is rather sparse in terms of specifying what the first selectman does. I suggest as the way of having the police chief and the fire chief report to the first selectman is to make the first selectman chairman of the police commission and the fire commission.
Do you believe that they report to her now?
No, they do not.
I know, but when I was in, I was told and everybody thought that they did report to me. And it's only since I've been gone that I have realized
I don't know
that
what-
I don't think that's true.
I don't know what the charter provided
Yeah,
back then.
I'm not sure the charter changed. I think the interpretation of it was different. So as it stands now, I'm not sure who they report to. They
don't
report to
me,
themselves.
they report
That's
to-
right.
So the first selectman appoints at the approval of the Board of Selectmen, but after that, the chief of police reports to the commission.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm a little uncomfortable with that. When I've realized how that has evolved, it's really what I should
Has
say.
evolved, I think that's.
Well, then it was wrong. I mean, then we were doing it wrong, whichever, but as it has changed or evolved, I agree with you. I think there should be,
Well, keep in mind, the first selectman was the chairman of the Board of Finance, so that gave
Yeah.
some authority over
yes,
the,
that's right. That was more so.
and I supported that change.
Yeah.
In, number two, the first selectman is ex officio of all boards, commissions, and committees, including, most people don't realize, the Board of Education by Connecticut statute. And the first selectman must have a seat at the table when necessary at all town bodies. I would keep the selectman membership at 3. Wilton has 5. Some people say, why don't we have 5 like Wilton? Well, in Wilton, the selectmen are the town's legislative body. So you're going to want to have more people deciding on regulations and proposed ordinances to bring to the town meeting. FOIA is not a reason to increase to 5, in my view. I would consider making the Board of Selectmen the traffic authority of the town, as it is in Greenwich and I believe Westport. Currently, it reports to the police commission, and but I do think the the police department should advise the selectmen on the traffic decisions and not decide themselves, which they effectively do, because the police commission never objects to a police department recommendation. I would remove,
Can you expand on traffic authority of the town? Exactly what are you?
well, the state
referring
mandates
to?
you have a traffic
Yeah.
authority, and ours has been the police commission or the police department. I think it's the police commission. And talking to our police commissioners, some of them over the past few years, they really never object to the police department's recommendations. And I think sometimes, and actually this is, trying to get a stop sign in this town is a major challenge. I never spoke at all about the new stop signs coming at Weed Mill. And, but I do think the decision should be a recommendation from the police, and then the selectmen should decide. That's the way it's done in both Greenwich and I believe Westport.
Right now, the commission has the final decision.
Yeah. I would consider making the Board of Selectmen the Water Pollution Control Authority. Currently, the Board of Finance is the WPCA. When we began to have it put quite a burden on the Board of Finance to decide those sewer cases. And it really, Ira Bloom, the town attorney at the time, said, I, as your Board of Finance to the WPCA, in most towns, it's the Board of Selectmen. I'm just quoting what Ira Bloom said at the time. It is a bit of work. And on the other hand, that's what the selectmen are for, to do more work than some of the
I
other
just
bodies.
wonder, I guess, go ahead and finish, but I think I wonder about the burden here of so many additional roles for the first selectman, especially if she's going to be attending the Board of Ed meetings.
No, not the first selectman, the Board of Selectmen.
Well, either way,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a whole nother group of substantial meetings. And in the end, does it really matter what they say? I mean, it's just another voice.
You talk about the Water Pollution Code.
No, I'm talking about the Board of Ed.
Oh, I'm not saying, Mayor Martin in Stanford was the one that showed up at a board meeting, Board of Education meeting, and said, I am an ex-official member of this body. And most people were scratching their head and saying, what are you talking about? That's the state statute in Connecticut.
It is the state.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, most
Did you
people
know
don't.
that, having been
Well,
on?
it's like, when.
For officer elections, I run the officer elections, as did Kevin, for the Board of
Oh,
Ed.
sure.
And if
Yeah,
there was
we've
a
always done
tie
that. Yeah.
on any of those votes, then I would be the tie-breaking person.
I
But
didn't know that.
yeah,
Oh, no, that part, I did that and that part I knew. Yeah, that's always
Yeah.
been
Yeah.
consistent. Yeah.
so, but yeah,
But
other than that,
otherwise, that's,
I mean, it's a tie, ex officio.
Well,
is
I'm not
tie-
suggesting-
You don't vote on anything unless there's a tie.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
agree.
suggesting people attend all the meetings.
Yeah.
I mean, even though you attend a lot of meetings, but
you go to a lot anyway.
if you have
when
a
there's an
critical issue, you
Yeah,
have a right
when
to be
there's
at
an
the
issue, you
meeting
should
and
be, yeah.
participate. That's the only point.
Okay, all right, I'm just, okay, go
Yeah, you
ahead.
could take your microphone up back there, and then you don't have to keep moving if you'd like.
The role of the administrative officer. Westport has an operations manager who serves at will and who may supervise such areas as the first selectman may decide. There has been discussion among some. Darien has had a town administrator for many years, and Wilton did it 3 years ago, a way that didn't work out so well. The town of Newtown studied the town administrator proposal for a long time. And that may be a future option, but if you ever want to consider going to town administrator, supporting the first selectman.
How do you feel about that?
For a while, a couple of years ago, I thought town administrator was probably the way to go, but
I
now
thought you thought
now
that.
I've seen it doesn't work in Wilton.
It didn't work in Wilton, for sure.
And
What
It-
was the reasons for not with?
Well, it was out of control, I guess is the right answer.
well, I don't know the reason. I plan to try to find out once he leaves the office. He was the first selectman in Bethel before.
Yes, he was. I
Yeah.
thought he had left office. Somebody told me last week he was gone. Is that not true?
I don't know, but on the other hand, he's a very competent, he was a retired businessman who was first selectman, and
Yeah, he was.
the
Yeah, I
prior-
remember that.
Lynn Vanderslice was the first select woman in Wilton, and she decided to hire, I forget his name actually, the town administrator with a 3-year contract, and she reduced her salary and increased the the new town administrator to even exceed what she was making as first selectman. So
To have that, she did not have a second person in command.
I don't know what the arrangement, you know, the trouble with small towns is you have a very small staff.
That's right.
And I think, you know, when I came here, Tom Stadler was making more than the first selectman, which
Oh, yeah.
I
I
never
remember
quite,
that, yeah.
I never quite understood. But it's done different ways in different towns. Greenwich has, you know, because it's a town 3 times our size, they have a lot more support around the first selectman. But when you get to be first selectman in New Canaan, you look around for someone to help you, and you got the finance director and the personnel director and the administrative officer.
And you like the idea of an operations manager. How would you see that differently than the town
It
administrator?
works well in Westport. You know, when I was first selectman, we had the monthly Westcog meetings, but we also had a lunch every month with the first selectman of Darien, Westport, Greenwich, and Darien. And seeing how they operated and, you know, conversing about what works and what doesn't work. I think having someone who the first selectman can bring in with him or her, which is the Westport model, is perhaps a good approach. I don't think.
So in other words, you replace that person correspondingly with any new first selectman. Is that what you're?
Yeah, that's what, you know,
They're saying?
that would be the only at-will employee in
Yeah.
New Canaan, other than part-time employees. That's a separate issue.
That is as a second in command, or is that an administrator, or is that
Not-
just?
Well,
a
second, but
support
you know,
staff?
someone who has the ability to supervise different departments.
Yeah, but the one thing the first selectman needs when they come in office is the continuity of somebody that knows what's going on, that even if you've been on all the boards and even
Yeah.
if you've served on the commissions, it's different. It's much different when you're under fire.
Well,
So
again,
I don't know.
small towns, first
They
selectmen
all
don't have a
work
lot of
differently. Yeah.
support around them. I watched your meeting last week, and
Yeah.
I think the role of the town committees are very important in recommending appointments to the selectmen, and because they do recruit and vet them. And the selectmen can recruit and consider unaffiliated volunteers. I had several
Mhm.
unaffiliated people who were chairmen of boards or committees. So I would,
The selectmen can also, in theory, recruit like Democrats and Republicans as well. They just maybe would send them through the DTC or the RTC.
well, again, partly because a first selectman and the selectmen can't know everybody in town, and the town committees are there to build a bench, so to speak. And especially for elected positions, you need to recruit people. They generally don't volunteer to run for office. But I do, you know, the discussion about changing the way appointments may be made, I think is ill considered. I would consider going to a system of 3 or 4 districts in town to elect some members of the town council. So,
What does that mean?
well, currently they're all at large,
Yes.
so they all sort of report to all the voters. And I think it promotes accountability. Darien has districts, Westport has districts. Several other, I wouldn't, you know, I think our 12-member town council is the right number. I mean, Darien has 100, and Greenwich has 167,
It's
200,
ridiculous. I know,
276.
it's
I mean,
ridiculous. I've been both and it's crazy.
Greenwich is the largest legislative body in the country.
Yeah.
Um,
And those are the RTM model as opposed to the
Mhm.
town council model.
Yeah, and Wilton has a town meeting, which is a horrible form of government, in my view. As does Richfield.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
do too.
And even, you know, Newtown has 12-member council, and every budget goes to referendum. So there's different ways of doing it, but I think New Canaan might consider, you might do the 3 districts that are the
Would that
schools.
be dependent on where someone lives, what district they represent?
yeah.
But then would you have to have enough members from the town council from each district to make that work. You would, right?
Well, you could have, 8 are elected by district and 4 are at large. I'm not saying they should all be.
You could,
Yeah.
yeah, that
Yeah.
would work.
Yeah.
That's a possibility.
I just
yeah.
think it's a way
Yeah.
of having further accountability.
All right.
I would consider allowing the town council to add to the Board of Finance budget with some limitations. Other towns do. And you might talk about what kind of limitations could be put on that. Because the Board of Finance doesn't always understand or appreciate political considerations in their budget recommendations. They tend to look at efficiency and they make trade-offs.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of
Have to.
what managers or the board. Number 10, I feel that the Board of Finance and the Planning and Zoning Commission should remain appointed bodies. I think expertise is more important than special interests. Happy to talk about that. I think the town clerk and treasurer should no longer be elected. The town clerk requires expertise and management experience as a town employee. And, this should not be made personal. Claudia has done a wonderful job for many years, and it's hard to find a replacement for her, but there are people that are working as town clerk employees around that are a better model than letting someone run for the office. The
How would you structure the treasurer's position if they were?
treasurer, again, it's not personal. I just think the model of, it requires a strong CFO. The finance department in Wilton does the duties of a treasurer, and I think perhaps others. And the Board of Finance should have, perhaps in the same way that they look over investments by the pension fund, they can look over investments of our cash. And so the combination between the CFO, the finance department, and the Board of Finance could replace.
I think they need to report to somebody who is a resident who pays taxes. I would not have that into the CFO. But I agree with you in terms of the levels of review. I think when you're at $100 million pension plan, you need more than one level of review. I mean, I think this
Who's the other
is
level?
crazy.
Who's the other level for the pension plan?
You tell me.
Well, the Board of
No.
Finance has
No,
exclusive.
he presents, he comes in and, as I understand it from.
There's a
talking
pension
to both
committee
them,
of the,
yeah.
that's a subset of the Board of Finance.
Yeah.
And then they review, and then it comes to the Board of Finance for full.
But they don't weigh in on the investment returns and the decisions and the.
Oh,
Yeah, the
they
pension
decide,
committee.
they decide a number of things, the
Yeah.
recommendation of the
Yes.
the money managers and.
We've reviewed, I mean, just this year, there was a reallocation. We have a new pension manager and there was a reallocation of investment. So, yeah, they do make those decisions, the pension committee and that's Board of Finance members that are making that.
That's not what he thinks, and that's not the way it's written.
Who thinks?
The treasurer.
Well, he's
So
Well, I don't think the treasurer is involved in the pension plan at
He's
all.
not involved in the pension plan.
I don't believe it.
No.
no, but I'm,
But the investment are our cash. Now, the role of overseeing the finance department effectively is one that I think the audit committee has replaced with the participation of the Board of Finance. I think again, I've thought about this a lot. You can't personalize it, but I think the other towns do it that way.
they do what, Kevin? I want to make sure I.
They
understand.
absorb the treasurer role for investing cash and stuff
That's-
into the.
That's what I'm saying. We're
into-
saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
all right, okay, I didn't know where you were going with that. All right. So what other towns do it that way?
Wilton specifically, because Ann did it at
Yes.
Wilton before she
Yeah.
was.
Richfield is just changing in 2027 and Westport absorbed their treasurer. I'm not sure the reporting, we can find out reporting, but in 2021, when Marpy, as he was leaving office, they added the town clerk and the town treasurer as appointed positions. And then Ridgefield in 2027 at the next election is moving the town clerk and the treasurer to appointed positions.
I think-
Reporting to
Yeah.
who?
I'll get that information. We're going
Okay.
out.
Rudy's working on that now?
Yeah, it's done. It's been
Oh, is it
approved
done? Okay.
as of 20. So find out
All
who
right,
that
would-
person's
that would be
reporting
good
to.
know. All right.
Reporting to the first selectman, but also both.
That's what I'm not
The audit
clear.
committee and the Board of Finance have a role in overseeing finances. So there are other layers of oversight.
Given just something that popped in my head about the town clerk, not the treasurer, but the
Yeah.
town clerk being appointed, given their role in administering elections, is it not, do you lose anything by having that be an appointed role as opposed to an elected role, just in terms of public confidence or
You know, the trouble is, it's hard to find someone with the expertise to run for office these days. So I think if, and Claudia is approaching retirement age in the next few years, I think,
that would outweigh?
I think it's better to hire a professional who's had experience. I mean, you go out and there is a market for people to come in and be town clerks. They work in other town clerk offices to be as an employee. I
They
just,
have to be a resident.
No,
well,
Then we have to change that, because right now, is that not correct? They have to be a resident?
sure, but you know, I mean, we don't require any of our employees to be resident, you know.
No. The treasurer and the town clerk.
If they run for
If
elective
they're
office.
running for
Right,
office, that's the point. So if they
Right.
aren't running for office, then they obviously don't have to be
right.
a resident.
Again, you can look at what other towns do.
Well, we're going through
Yeah.
every bit of it, but I'm just getting your thoughts. Yeah.
I would remove term limits from the members of the audit committee. That was a mistake. Kathleen Corbett and I drafted the audit committee and, you know, really harkens back to the notion of, well, auditors are supposed to change every few years. And these are the only term limits we have in our charter.
And why was that imposed? Help me out.
Because in the audit profession, it's required that auditors change
Oh, in
every few years,
corporations, sure,
except in the
yeah.
public sector, because there are so few public sector auditors. It's very common to have, and actually even for that, Bill can address this. There's many corporations that had auditors, same auditors for 20 and 30 years. But I just think it was a mistake and I would eliminate those term limits. And finally, I would support John Engel's recommendation to add preservation and conservation objectives to the charter. And I talked to John about how you would do it. He talked about it last Friday at
Yeah,
the
you did.
Sentinel Coffee, and I think you simply added the description of the mission as part of the charter. That's what those bodies do.
You wouldn't merge that under conservation?
Well, conservation really focuses more on land and
Yeah.
environment,
It does.
and P&Z focuses on buildings. So I think
No, preservation.
well,
P and Z as opposed to preservation. I mean, I'm talking about preservation and conservation.
conservation,
saying under
conservation is for
mission.
land. Conservation is
Yeah.
for land
Yeah.
and environmental issues, and planning and zoning is for buildings,
Yeah.
structures, and actually, then there's, who else is in the business of preservation? The Historic District Commission, which is already their mission to administer that small
But you
historic.
could expand their role. Could you not take it out of?
Again, I'm just supporting
historic?
I'm
I mean,
supporting
there's
the,
a number of ways to.
I think the
Concept.
people that we have on the Conservation Commission are more environmentally focused
Primarily, yeah.
individuals, and to Kevin's point, the Historic District are more preserving buildings and property. So I think that just the interest level and the focus of the people on conservation is very different than what would be the Historic District Commission people.
I think this has been highlighted, you know, I can't believe what they've done to downtown Darien. And I don't think that should ever happen in New Canaan.
In what regard?
The scale of what's
Oh,
downtown.
it's huge.
It's-
It's absolutely huge.
You know, if you want to destroy your
I know.
downtown, I was fully supportive of David Gentili. I thought it was a tremendous proposal, but you know, what they proposed and what they have delivered is just a monstrosity. Darien is a different town, but on the other hand, I would never want to see that kind of infrastructure in downtown New Canaan.
No, I wouldn't either.
So, and that's,
But where does that belong?
well, that's what, all John is saying is let's figure it out and.
I
put-
agree with
put an
let's figure it
emphasis.
out.
So-
I'm just not, I'm
So your
not.
proposal,
there.
or not proposal, but your thought is just to add language to the
Yeah.
current.
Yeah, just
Not
that,
have a
that's a
separate
really
preservation.
important mission of our town,
Gotcha.
to maintain the character and the scale of the town.
No, I
And
agree. Yeah.
we're a semi-rural town. Darien is a they've
More.
extended Stanford.
Yeah. It's more, it's.
They've
becoming
extended
more,
Stanford
yeah.
into Darien, so I don't think we should ever, now, you know, things will continue to evolve, but we're primarily a residential community, and So those are my thoughts. I'd be happy to, provide backup on anything you may have questions about, or
How do you feel about term limits for town council?
there's a natural turnover in positions.
Normally,
I mean,
yeah.
I didn't like the fact that Keith Ritchie was parking committee chair for 20 years and I replaced him. It takes some
No.
talking sometimes to have people step down. I don't think it's a good idea to be but on the other hand, someone like John Goodwin is, when you have a very qualified person doing a great job, you don't want to have an artificial term limit taking them out of a position.
But they could still stay on the commission too. I mean, they could still.
I'm not saying chairman, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
having to step off something that, Mr. Perret had to step off of the audit committee.
Yeah, I thought that
Or
was.
you wouldn't want Laszlo to have had to have come off. Right?
Well, that's the point.
Well, no, he
That's
came
the-
back on. I mean, I brought
That's
him
the
back
point.
on. He'd been on
A
for
very
years.
valuable member of planning and zoning. Laszlo was on for years.
Yeah.
And that expertise and institutional knowledge on boards with a lot of like critical information that they have to, carry on and they don't learn immediately. Those kind of boards, making them cycle off would just add to, I mean, part of the things that have happened in other towns, sorry. Part of the things that have happened in other towns is you had inexperienced boards that missed things. And I mean, go read the paper
Yeah.
on Wilton, what happened in Wilton.
Mhm.
And they missed stuff and you got a lot of stuff developed that shouldn't have gone through.
And what about, so that's kind of the boards and commissions, the appointed positions. What about the elected terms for elected office? If they're more generalist roles like town council.
Well, I sort of like, I didn't put it in here, but I sort of like the 4-year term for first selectman because running for office every 2 years is not fun. Both money wise and
It's grueling, tremendously grueling.
so I would.
Very few people get that, but it is.
But, I don't feel strongly about it. I just think it's something that,
Mhm. Yeah. How do you feel about expanding both the fire commission and the police commission to 5 members?
I don't see any reason to do that. Deanna made the comment the other day, it's hard to find volunteers.
Oh, it is.
I'm
yeah.
concerned, this generation doesn't have GE pensions and IBM pensions, Citibank pensions. This is going to be a generation that gets their kids through school and moves on. So our population of
I know.
seniors who volunteer are not going to, it may happen, but I think it's going to be far tougher. And the young people in their careers, commuters to New York, it's a rare person who wants to be involved in town government. You just, you're focused on your career and you're focused on your kids.
And then you downsize to be able to afford to retire. I mean, that's sort of where it's.
Well, that's another issue entirely as to whether people stay in town. But I think it's going to get harder and harder with this generation coming up to get volunteers. And as it is, you have to generally search for people and encourage them to either run for office or participate
Mhm.
as a volunteer on a committee. So I think there's a generational change. And that's why the larger cities, they appoint people because they can't, it's the nature of a city. If you get what's happens in New York City, I mean, when elections can have awful consequences when you get too big a scale. New Canaan is like other small towns. It's not heavily political. The fact that both parties are now half of the registered voters, it's still enshrined in Connecticut law statute that the political parties are an integral part of the governance process. And I think getting people to volunteer is going to get increasingly hard.
It's going to what?
Get increasingly hard.
Oh, I think it already has.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point to keep in mind in general is expanding to try to have more people is.
And also
maybe
not have more bodies. I mean,
Yeah.
there's certain
more.
bodies that should be dissolved.
Yeah,
If you don't do anything for a few years, you ought to go away. The idea of moving things, 10 years ago, we said, well, let's put things in the charter. So we emphasize the importance of health and human services and things. But the reality is, if things outlive their usefulness, you ought to, not try to make things continue that don't make sense anymore. And I
Right.
think, the fewer bodies, even if they have more jurisdiction, would make sense than to create more bodies with more bodies to having to find bodies to fill the slots.
Yeah, and I think those are good points. The one area we have had questions about is expanding the Board of Selectmen from 3 to 5, and I know you mentioned that briefly. And I've heard a few rationales for that. One is that so both parties can caucus, which is something that never would have occurred to me, but
Well,
I
that's the
think
FOIA issue, which quite honestly,
that's what you meant by the FOIA issue.
I like, what forces, everything has to be done in public.
Mhm.
You know, if,
Right.
once you create a body that you can't have caucuses, half of the stuff is not done in public anymore, and they come in and they've already discussed it, and they put it up for vote, and they don't have a discussion in public. So I think FOIA with 3, forces you to do everything you do in public.
Right.
Yeah, I think it works. I mean, I don't know if it could be better, but.
Again,
I think
Wilton,
it
Wilton,
works.
it is their legislative body. They don't have a council. They don't have a representative town meeting. They have to propose their legislation through the selectmen, which we did when we had a town meeting before 1981 or whenever we went to a town council.
Mhm.
So it's just, I don't see the value of 5 people versus 3, and I just certainly don't think FOIA is a reason to, I think FOIA is the opposite reason to make everything be done in public.
Okay.
And I do think adding more duties to the selectmen, such as the traffic authority or the WPCA, would give the selectmen, again, when you sign up to be a selectman, when you're getting paid, and actually I thought Greenwich,
Fractionally.
well, but Greenwich's framework paying the selectmen 10% of what the first selectman gets. If you're going to ask somebody to volunteer a few hours every week, and which it's what selectmen do, then you ought to compensate them, and they also ought to have more of a responsibility than just coming and not participating that much. I don't see any value when I watch Wilton meetings that I would rather have 5 personally. So
And you don't think that's worked well under the Board of Finance, the Water Authority, the.
well, again, the
Sewer.
sewer is a very specialized activity, and you don't touch it very often. But when you had to have what they did with the 830G cases, that was a substantial burden on the Board of Finance. And again, I go back to Ira Bloom. I didn't know that most other towns have the selectmen do the sewer responsibilities. Board of Finance will still be involved in the budget because it's a budget item. But the issues are things that the first selectman has to be involved in. And the selectmen should be
Not too much, not very much.
I
Not
did
to the
I did a lot of
extent.
work to convert from a tax to a fee, which the federal government encourages, the sewer fees be fees and not taxes.
Well, that.
Took a lot of work.
That,
And then, how you measure it, given the fact that 2/3 of the town is not on water. But anyway, I just think it's something that should be added to the portfolio of the selectmen and not
okay,
the Board of Finance.
all right. Anything else here that we,
I'd like to return just briefly to the town administrator topic, just
Yeah.
because, can you talk a little more about why you thought it was a good idea, aside from when you decided it wasn't a good idea after
Well,
serving the Wilton? 'Cause it
well-
sounded like you were on that path.
Well,
at
first
some
of all,
point.
the town administrator historically had been was intended to be a key support for the first selectman. And I think Peter Murphy in his day, and then George Moranis, and then Tom Stadler, as retired Big Four, Big Six accountants, were substantial executives. And I think they then somehow or other devolved into taking minutes and it all depends on how the administrative officer relates to the first selectman. I think Tom Stadler was underutilized. But I do think my experience and COVID really changed the mind of a lot of people. We had first selectmen resigning during COVID. They just, the demands on going through that process. But you need somebody to help you. And I think the idea of what does Westport call their
Operations.
operations manager, and someone also who you can bring in. I mean, you may very well decide if you have an excellent manager that you want to keep, you have that choice. But I just think it's very frustrating to come into an operation and everyone is already in place, and you have little ability to add another role. But I do think if you're going to go to a town administrator, which has worked very well for Darien for 25 or 30 years, yeah, a long time. It's a different kind of, you're really giving a lot of responsibility to a town administrator. And the first selectman becomes a political figure, which is important.
I think in Darien, the town all of those positions actually report into the town administrator, like the first selectman above them.
Which creates a professional management, and continuity. But that's a big leap to go to a town administrator. And it's very hard to find the right person.
Very.
Very hard.
Very.
There's other people in other
Oh.
parts of the country, the town managers are very common in lieu of first selectman at all. But
I dealt with the one in Westchester because the county supervisor could not be bothered to ever take my calls. So the one I went through, his job was just to get rid of me. I mean, there was no dialogue. There was no way of penetrating that wall just to protect the county
well, I
supervisor.
think they tend to be more they tend to become government employees who can be less responsive to the public.
I wouldn't support that.
Yeah.
I like having access to a first selectman,
Yeah.
and I like having the first selectman choose the administrative officer, or whatever you want to call them, operations officer.
Yeah.
Whether they inherit them or not, they should be able to decide what skills they need.
Yeah.
I mean, I inherited George Moranis, and he was totally underutilized. I killed him. I mean, he was just always on, so it worked, but he needed to be used like that. I mean, he didn't want just a old folks retirement job, and that's how it was perceived.
Mhm.
And it wasn't. So, but then it's changed again, as you know, so what? But I thought that having that kind of finance and auditing experience was important in that job. I really put a heavy focus on that, and I would do so again. I just think you have to have somebody besides the CFO. And you can work with the CFO, but you have to have that dialogue to challenge those assumptions. And I think I lucked out. I had that.
I think it depends on the background of who the first selectman is. I mean, I have a finance background, so I don't need that as much as, you were an HR professional, you were a lawyer. I mean, I think it really depends on who you have in that role. I think Jeb was a finance person as well. He was a senior executive.
Deloitte.
He was a
Yeah, that's a
consultant.
finance,
Yeah,
he was a
he was
finance
auditing,
background. Yeah, that's a finance background. So I think, I always say people that administrative officer role, is there to be the support person to the first selectman. I wouldn't need another finance person in that role, like for me. And so, but to have somebody that, I worry about that being the town administrative role, because I think some of the concerns are when the town administrator doesn't adhere to what the first selectman wants done, you have a natural conflict, and one person is elected and the other one has job security through, employment contracts. And it's very difficult to get rid of people in municipal government. And so, if there's a natural conflict between what the first selectman wants and what the administrator wants, and I think that's what you might have run into, the only person who suffers is the first selectman because they're accountable to the electorate.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
I just think a first selectman has to have some ability to have someone that they're not forced to accept. They need to be able to hire somebody, and our current charter doesn't really contemplate that.
Yeah, but that's easy.
But again, if
That's
you have an
easy
excellent,
job
if you have an excellent person in the
to
role,
finesse if you
Yeah.
want to get rid of somebody. That's not hard. Not in my world, it isn't, but I know what you're
It's-
saying, yeah. Yeah, well, this is what I did. All right, what else do we want to discuss or anybody
This
that
is
has?
I have a little bit of a tangential question,
All
and then
right.
we'll go to Angela
All right.
and Steve. Looks like they have a question. I think it's only the Board of Finance that has town council approval for appointments.
I think that's a mistake in the current charter. There's one place where it should say town, Board of Finance and Audit Committee,
The
Audit Committee ordinance, yeah. But it's not in the charter.
Okay.
we intended to carry that over into the charter from the ordinance, and I think we missed that. And then, I'm sorry, the ethic boards too? Maybe the ethics, I'm not sure about the ethics board. Yeah.
Just appoint somebody. I don't know if they have to go to-
Yeah, I believe that town council has to approve appointments to the Board of Ethics, to Audit Committee, and oops, there's a third.
Yeah.
Finance.
So it's,
Yeah,
But
Board of
not
Finance.
it's
P&Z.
Board of Finance, ethics, or it is not.
No, it is ethics, yes.
It is, that's, yeah.
Well, there's one place in the charter where I think it mistakenly only said that the Board of Finance, and that's not true. That's why I'm,
Yeah, I don't,
So
that's.
that's
not
a
true.
correction to be
That's-
made.
Yeah.
Okay. And but not P and Z, and I'm just asking because P and Z is the other, being on this commission so far, we've heard Board of Finance and P and Z about being elected. And I wonder if that would have,
I wouldn't have a problem with having the town council approve P and Z. I mean, to me, that's, first selectman's going to be reluctant to put up someone who doesn't have the votes of the town council, as I learned. And so I think I'd have no problem having P and Z be added to town council.
Would you expand or elect the ethics committee?
The ethics, I was almost going to recommend we dissolve the ethics committee
I
because.
thought it was state, I looked this up and it is state statute.
Well-
I don't know if we can do it. Yeah, I
No,
did.
no, you're
I
not-
found
To
it.
have
You're not
You
required.
don't have to?
No, you're not
or
required
it's
to have
just
one.
recommended. Okay, interesting.
Um,
All right.
Quite honestly, a good year for the ethics board is they've done nothing. And on the other hand, so it's kind of like, exactly.
It's what?
feast or famine.
I mean, the only time it was ever used, it was misused, so I'm not a big fan.
Well, let me disagree with you for a minute because I chaired the ethics committee at the bank forever. I think it's an excellent value and source and committee if it's used right. It's not used right if they have to worry about whether to be reappointed or who they're reporting to, or they don't have the authority to do anything, whether it's from the resident or a commission or an employee. It should be utilized by all, and
Or if it's
then it
weaponized.
is remarkably effective. It's not structured right, in my opinion. So I agree, you either structure it appropriately or get rid of it.
Well, it's structured properly.
So, no, not if it's reporting and appointed by the first selectman, because it should have total autonomy.
It has to be approved by the town council and also the,
You do not reappoint them?
I appoint them, but they
Yeah.
have to be approved by the town council.
Yeah, I know, but even so, maybe they should either be elected or they should be.
I would definitely not
it's-
elect them. On the
Or
other
not
hand,
elect them.
on the other hand,
Absolutely.
I think
You
people,
have to be really choosy who you put on a group.
I agree,
like
but
that. It's hard. It's hard, but it is very effective if it's used right. Probably the most so of any committee I've ever.
again,
served.
Kathleen Corbett and I drafted the ethics board as
Yeah,
we did
well-
the audit committee, and I thought it was a good idea. And everybody now, not everybody, but Stanford had one, it made sense, but it tends to not be effective, especially with
Because
respect
it's
to
not
town.
organized right. I mean, it has to
Well,
really,
I'm
yeah,
not
you have to
sure.
put a lot of thought into it.
I think you also have, because of the nature of public service, is it gets weaponized, unlike what you
Yeah.
would find in a public company. I think, in government, like in a lot of things, certain individuals use it as a tool,
Sure they do.
and
It's agenda driven in a municipality. In a corporation or Wall Street firm, it's cut and dry. It's very black and white as to what you are allowed to do. It's not superficial at all. So that's just another.
I was also going to make the comment that I forgot to make that I think you ought to just be thinking about tweaks and not kind of wholesale changes because this has to be something the town council is willing to put to the electorate. And some of these things require more study and your time frame doesn't allow you to do the kind of study to make a change.
It's a lot. It's a
And-
lot to do in a very
Yeah.
short amount of time.
And overall, on the other hand, I think our charter works very well, so that there's not a lot we should change. But, especially in the case of the first selectman, you don't know it until you experience it. And, when a neighbor is doing it better, I think you might look at that and just incorporate what they're doing. Because it doesn't change things that much, but having people who don't report to a civilian is a bad idea. And it's important to have civilian eyes on all town managers. And, you know, you can do some of these things like the police commissioner is in Greenwich and Westport is the first elected. There's nobody around them. Jim Marpy at the time said, especially during the anti-police thing, and you know, they wanted to have a civilian review board. He said, I'm perfectly happy to have additional people join me.
This is which board?
Westport.
Which board in Westport?
The first selectman
Oh.
is the police commissioner.
Oh, that's right.
There is
I remember
no
that now,
police
yeah.
commission. So,
Yeah.
but he was saying, I'd be happy to have, you know, a civilian review board around me on police matters, because he was the only person that ran the police.
So given that the first selectman ran that, was the chief of police then the primary person on that board, or
There was no board. It was just chief of police reported to the first selectman.
just the two of them? There
Yeah.
was no other?
No, at the time, I don't know whether they, you know, Jim Marpy said, I'd be happy to have a civilian
definitely look into
review
that.
board.
I just wanted to make sure we got to Angela and Steve next.
Yes, please.
Sorry about that, Angela.
No problem. So, Kevin, thank you so much for coming in and sharing your thoughts. It's really invaluable to hear from folks who have experienced government at the sharp end, if you like, and to hear what you think works well and what doesn't work so well. I'm intrigued to hear more about which bodies you think could be dissolved. You sort of partially answered that, but maybe you could expand. And then whether the housing authority ought to be brought into the orbit of local government in New Canaan.
I don't think we have that option. The housing authority is authorized by state statute. And the town council appoints their members. I don't think we have the option to bring the housing authority into the town government. I could be wrong, but I don't think we have that option. You know, for example, the Utilities Commission, the reason once Tom Teslick resigned and we had accomplished, you know, the utilities you have little control over, and the state is the one that regulates them. 25, 30 years ago, there may have been a reason. Nobody else has the Utilities Commission these days. And I just think that's one, as an example, that I would dissolve.
Would you expand it or absorb it into another commission, or?
Well, to some extent, you might have the Conservation Commission look
Well, I
at,
was
you know,
thinking-
sustainability was
I was thinking
something
I
that,
didn't know. I hadn't looked it up in state statute yet, whether or not that was.
no, it's not
appropriate.
required, not required.
It's, yeah,
You're not required.
it's not required.
And
at
I,
all.
what other one, you know, in most cases, things are required by state statute, so you don't have the option, but I think, I would not be adventurous to try to create new bodies, just give their duties to somebody else who are already, without overburdening them.
And Kevin, it sort of sounded as though you might dissolve Health and Human Services.
Oh, no, not at all. I didn't,
Okay.
you know, the discussion 10 years ago was, you know, you're not important unless you're in the charter. So I will put all that we have in the charter as Westport does.
But I'm sure if
Yes.
still a comment. Okay.
Yes, Kevin, Steve Case. Just wanted to ask a question to go into a little bit more detail about what you spoke about earlier about the Board of Finance and Planning and Zoning as appointed commissions versus elected. We've had several people speak to the Charter Review Commission as town members, as residents. And they're just saying there's not enough kind of representation across the town, and they've pushed for those boards being elected. And just want to get your reaction to those two committees, those two commissions in particular.
On the one hand, the Board of Finance, as Todd Lavieri explained, you really should have a diversity of experience, and there's not much reason to have people, because quite honestly, we don't have great budget fights. You know, we have a very civil, and other towns admire us for what we do in the finance area. So I wouldn't change something that's not broken, as I think someone said. P&Z, they have a job to do as a adjudicatory body. You know, the innuendo that there's some kind of communications that are made between P&Z and other town officials is just bunk. You know, I never, ever got involved. I did express my support for the ONO project for Waveney, only because senior housing was one of the things I believed in, and my first experience in town government. We need senior housing. But I never, ever got involved in a P&Z matter, and I don't think any first selectman ever should.
No,
So,
no.
And, there isn't, so, if people want to elect P and Z, I think it would denigrate the quality of the people, and people would become issue oriented rather than trying to be fair and balanced in their approach to deciding things.
Are you familiar with any hybrid model of elected and appointed
I'm not,
people?
I-
I'm not either.
I-
Lawyers are checking it, but I'm not sure that exists either.
But actually, the idea of having the town council approve people is not a bad idea. That gives you some accountability to beyond the selectmen appointing members. And generally, too, I also, by the way, I watched the meeting, last meeting, and I always go to the chairman. Well, I did, and I'm sure Deanna does, because oftentimes the chairman recruits members for their committee or commission or board, and I always talk to the chairman before adding someone to it. Important. Now, there are minor, I couldn't care less about some. I never understood what inland wetlands was never one of my favorite bodies. I hate to tell Angela, but they had a culture and they were able to recruit their people. So you get involved in the important ones. You don't really. What's the other one? The Board of Assessment Appeals and things that you just kind of like. That's elected actually. Board of Assessment Appeals. What's the other one? The small one that does the P&Z appeals.
Yeah, there's a zoning appeals.
Zoning, oh.
I never understood what they did. So quite honestly.
Oh, God. Well, I know your time is taken up. with the stuff that
I don't
really
focus on
matters.
things
It's
that-
not
that-
what you don't have to worry about. You don't-
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly. On the other hand, I always would talk to the chairman. I didn't like, by the way, this is important too. And even Kathleen, who's not here, I think agreed with me. A first selectman should have members of his party be chairman of boards and commissions, unless, I had an unaffiliated chairman of conservation, and I had a Democrat. John Goodman was a perfectly good chairman of P&Z. It's very circumstantial, but on the other hand, it's, we do have two different teams in town. We're not terribly political, but we do have two different teams in town. And I could not talk to a Democrat chairman like I could talk to a Republican chairman. And I just think a first selectman should have the prerogative. I don't know whether it's true or not. Keith Ritchie always told me that when he was recruited by Dick Bond to go on to the parking commission, Dick, rather than conducting the election, he said, "I nominate Keith Ritchie to be chairman of the parking commission." I think that's the way it was done. There were a lot of things done 20 years ago.
Yeah,
We don't.
listen, I saw
don't-
a lot before I was in that I obviously changed. Some of this was just
Again, so-
ancient history.
So my point is, we're not cavalier about the important bodies in terms of who you recruit, especially audit committee members and people, the ethics board members. And yet there are, range. But Health and Human Services was one of my favorite commissions because
Mine too.
I
Oh,
really was
yeah.
a big fan of a number of things that are done by Health and Human Services. And
It's been expanded and it's been upgraded and we've really, I think it's just
Yeah.
great. So it's worked over time. I agree with you. That one needed a lot of.
if there's anybody that's not in the charter, put them in the charter, because I don't want anybody to think I'm a minor.
Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I actually can't find the raise the hand button on my large screen here, but in any event, I'm sure it's one of them. Kevin, just two things, if we were to sort of keep things the same, for the most part, in terms of who's elected, who's not elected, and appointed, and all sorts of stuff like that. I'd like you to say a little bit more about the way you define, and many others have defined, I'm a committee chair, so I always talk to the first selectman about the appointments, or we never appoint anybody to a committee unless we have agreement between the chairman and the first selectman. Because, I was served with 3 first selectmen, and I'm not sure that, sometimes you're asked, this is the person we're going to pick. Do you disagree? And sometimes you're asked, do you have any suggestions before we start the process? So, and I don't think one approach is a little bit healthier than the other approach. And then on the subject of independence, the audit committee, and you could play this, and back in the first iteration of the audit committee in year 3 or 4, and we were all learning at that particular point in time, we could not, as an audit committee, we could not get satisfaction from town officials. And we could not get satisfaction from the town council. And we even went to a Republican caucus and a Democratic caucus to try to get satisfaction, which caused us to write a letter to say we would resign unless these 9 steps were taken care of. You'll remember that letter. Some town council member put it in the newspaper. That was not our intention. So, you know, in an ideal world, I could agree with everything you said, but we don't live in an ideal world, and people are people. And it only
No, we
matters.
do live in that, we do live in an ideal world in New Canaan, Connecticut, so
Pretty
I
much.
disagree.
And it's,
Pretty much.
you know, and it only matters when there's a problem. It doesn't matter when things are going well. So in terms of this approval process, who goes first, who makes the recommendation? Is it the town? Is it the Republican committee, the Democratic committee? Is it the town council? Is it the first selectman? How does the chair? If you were to be writing the rules down that had to be followed, how would you actually write those rules down? What
Well,
would you
again,
think?
the town committees are important because,
I know they are. That's what I'm saying. How would you say?
Well-
Who goes first in that process for, you know, I mean, or is it just a jump ball? And
well,
because
I always,
every first
I always,
selectman-
I always insisted the town committee give 2 names, not just one, for a vacancy. In fact, sometimes I appointed a Democrat. I didn't even ask Todd Lampert lives in the historic district and he's a Democrat. So I knew he was a solid lawyer. So, you know, there's no specific rules that a first selectman has to follow as far as making recommendations. But I think the value of getting they find talent that, you know, the 3 selectmen cannot possibly do. They're out there meeting people and recruiting people to get involved. And some of the best recruits are some of the best volunteers are people who were recruited. And, you know, they otherwise wouldn't step forward and volunteer. So I think
I agree with that. I'm just trying to have a little bit more definition, because one of our presenters at one of the earlier meetings said, you know, there were recommendations coming from the Republican or Democratic side. And that's when we got into the whole question about independents being appointed. And but then was quick to say, you know, a lot of time they weren't good, you know, they weren't good names. We had to go out for other people. So I'm just trying to figure out you know, if we were to stay with the model of volunteers, not election, how would we sort of get the best volunteer? And who has final say and who has first say, just in your broad terms?
I don't think you can create rules that first selectmen and selectmen are required to follow. I just think that everybody, my experience with town volunteers is everybody's going in the same direction, wanting to do the right thing for the town. I mean, it's rare that you have disagreements over things other than issues as opposed to people. So I think we're very lucky to have, 1, the number of volunteers in town, and 2, the civility we have to get things done.
I got that. And
I
volunteers. So on the question of on the question of reporting lines, where there is, you know.
By the way, Bill, let me also add, I was never told by the Republican Town Committee, for example, you know, we want this person. I mean, I never had any pressure from I had to beg sometimes to get names, but I never once did someone say, we want this person to be appointed. Never happened.
Okay. Well, that's fine. Maybe I misunderstood.
And I also wouldn't question, my view was the DTC, the Democrats were responsible for vetting their candidates. I wasn't going to second guess their decisions. It just wasn't, I didn't have time to do that.
I would agree with Kevin's assessment. You cannot put an overarching prescriptive process to do this, because volunteers come in multiple different ways.
Yeah.
And, you know, sometimes they come from the RTC, sometimes I know them, sometimes someone else that's not on the RTC, or, you know, will present, you know, I've gotten people to email me through, you know, the unaffiliated version. So not everything can be so prescriptive. And I did want to go back to your comment about the town council and planning and zoning. I want people to remember that the Board of Selectmen is elected. They are not an appointed board. So, I mean, you are responsible to the electorate by the appointment of the planning.
That's not my point, Deanna. I mean, but.
No, I'm not talking about your point. I went back to another point from earlier, Bill.
Yeah, no, but I was getting at, but the appointment, I mean, I think there are, the fact is, I know that there are first selectmen who sort of, as a committee chair, told you what the choice was, which is fine. That's the rules. But I'm just trying
What?
to understand,
I don't know what you're talking about, Bill, and I don't think Kevin does either.
well, then maybe it wasn't either one of you.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
then,
so-
Committee chair of what, Bill? I'm just,
Well, like if you were adding somebody to the audit committee.
yeah.
I mean, I guess I'm just trying to understand.
Would you, if you were doing that, would you not have the chairman of the audit committee interview that person after the first selectman recommends them or the board before they are appointed?
Is it after? I think that's my very point. Is it?
Well, that's
At what
how
point-
I didn't
at
do
what point?
audits. I didn't have it, but I did it with other.
And Bill, on a
commissions.
five-member board, if you have a clunker, he's only one vote. So I
But
don't.
you don't want to put the clunker on.
I
That's
don't
the
remember
point where-
anybody, in my 6 years experience, and even as town council observing, I don't remember anybody on a board or a commission that was a bad person. I mean, so I don't know what we're
and
talking about
everybody
here.
has terms, so if they're not a performing member of a board, they can
Yeah.
be removed
If
within
you could
a
have
few
people
years.
who were ineffective, and I removed somebody from the P and Z when they never opened their mouth. I thought, they didn't know what their job was. So,
But
and I
but
got
when
a
it
lot of
comes-
flack for it.
But when it comes to P and Z in particular, because I dragged Laszlo back in after he'd been off several years, having been on the commission. And I made him chairman immediately. I didn't have another person that could be
Yeah.
appointed or elected chairman. So
And-
I moved that process.
In the past, people
But-
would be unaffiliated and they register as a Republican just to get an appointment, and they really weren't Republicans. So,
That's true too. But also on that, once you get somebody like that in who is more knowledgeable, then I think you use that person to interview the other people that you're bringing.
exactly.
I mean,
No.
I can't imagine expecting a first selectman to know all this detail that qualifies them. They may like them, they like their experience, they
Yeah.
like their work, whatever. But that's not enough on some of these commissions. You actually need specific expertise.
I think we have to look at our neighbors. I mean, Stanford has had horrible problems with, and they have people who, they cannot find volunteers. So,
Stanford,
yeah,
really? It's gotten to be a bigger problem. They used to.
very much so. And they,
It's not good.
people hold over and they just don't, and they've also had problems with their elected P and Z and stuff. I mean, you got to be careful.
And why did that not work for them?
Well,
Being elected.
again, people tend to be able to get elected, and then all they do is mouth off, and civility goes out the door.
I saw that in Westport.
Yeah.
I also saw that, not so much in Greenwich, but I saw it in, a couple.
Yeah.
Pound Ridge was the strangest.
We're very fortunate.
I-
We don't argue a lot. There aren't that many issues we disagree about, and people are, for the most part, very qualified to find people to serve. I think we're focusing on the wrong thing to try to change.
I don't,
How we
I don't
populate.
think the process is wrong. I think, the charter just has to be looked at, obviously, and acknowledged.
And I just, I had to have a little bit of a different approach than maybe Kevin or you had with chairman of committees. And I said it when I was elected because I was asked specifically before I was elected, but I have a big role in choosing who's on the committees, and working with the various town, political bodies or my other selectmen. But with the chairman of the committees, I tend to find that the committees know who's best to lead their group. I mean, Angela can speak to that very specifically. I mean, she's a Democrat, I'm a Republican, but her committee wanted her to be chair. And I said, if your committee thinks that you're the most qualified to be chair, then who am I to stand in the way of that? So that's just me. So every first selectman may look at it differently, but I would never put that kind of requirement in a charter. I think where
No, I agree.
you are at your detriment, get into the minutia in a charter.
Yeah.
I think it needs to be a long-standing document, and that's kind of the same concern I have with putting too many boards and commissions in the charter, because as time changes and you need like you're saying, you don't.
Oh,
want-
yeah, you're right. It's
If
harder
you
to-
put it in the charter, you can't remove
Agree.
it. Whereas if it's just an ordinance that the town council can review, they can say, you know what, we don't need this body anymore. And you don't have to open the charter to change that.
Right. Well, actually, I was kind of surprised by the Newtown. They repeatedly amend their charter. Newtown has a very, very professional charter, but they revised it in 2016, 12, 2008, 2001.
Wow.
They kind of, there's nothing says you just can't go to make an amendment to the charter and go to voters for an election. So,
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, after their experience at Newtown, it probably
Yeah.
gave them more. Yeah, sir.
Yeah, we made a number of references in your presentation to Westport
right.
and lauded them with many very positive things that they did. I looked at the Westport structure and they elect their board of finance, and I believe they elect their planning and zoning, I'm pretty sure if I got it right. So as an entity, we each seem to like parts of the same thing, but just different parts. I'm just saying, how do you feel about the sort of the a la carte approach that you take of looking at Westport and picking out certain pieces, but leaving behind the other ones, which are elected?
I tend to focus more on, what I know about Westport or Sanford is what I read in the newspapers. P&Z was never a subject of our lunches, our monthly
No,
lunches.
ours either.
So I was focusing on how do you operate as a first selectman? I wasn't talking,
That
my
was-
comments about what you should do with are gratuitous. I mean, I'm just,
Mhm.
it's my view, and you're gonna have different views. I do think, a lot of other neighbors envy how civil we are in New Canaan and how we all are sort of going in the same direction. I also, would admit, I think
Mhm.
probably, I mean, the RTC 25 years ago ran this town. So, I think it was a control factor. And, on the other hand, control isn't always bad. And control only in the sense of not letting things get out of hand. If you and quite honestly, this community is so focused again on their careers and their children. It's rare that we have a burning issue that we're all going to get upset about. We're a unique community in not, there may be a particular proposal for a building or there may be a particular proposal but we've been very lucky. We're a very cohesive and civil community.
But before Zoom, we had a lot of people who would come to all of our meetings and the public hearings were constant, especially with when there was easily 12 between the purchase and the flexi
I
place.
think
and
the younger
the
generation is,
district and yeah. So people were more engaged. They really were, than that I've seen.
Yeah.
So it has changed. And naturally, and
Yeah.
to your point, they're involved with their careers and their children and their sports, and not that they weren't before, they were, but they always showed up. It was interesting. We could go through 2 hours of public hearing.
well, the fact
It
that
was
no one
crazy.
came to the Board of Finance.
No, they don't. Not
Hearing on a
now.
budget last year
No.
was fascinating.
It's different.
I mean, it's kind of like, that's, people are very happy. I always
They're
say,
happy and comfortable, or they don't think it's going to matter and they don't want to make it.
usually if someone
stink.
complains about something in New Canaan, there's something wrong with them.
Well, that's what it starts to look like. I know, it's
Um,
not good.
And we're very lucky. I always say we're the luckiest people in the world because we have the resources and we have such a talented and educated
Yeah,
population.
we
that
do. We do.
uh,
40% with masters or advanced degrees.
Yeah.
Not bad, gang.
Hmm.
Odd.
and we have excellent schools with an excellent superintendent, so.
All right. Any other questions or comments? We will close this
Thank you.
group. Thank you for coming. That was really
I'd be
well
happy,
appreciated.
I'll be happy to send this to each of you.
Well, we're gonna have it put in the
Sure.
group. We'll
Okay.
have
Yeah, if you
it-
send an email, we can.
But either way, if you've got it on email, that's better. We
Yeah.
can just
Okay, great.
A motion to end the
Yeah.
meeting. Yeah.
There's
Second.
two people.
Thank you for having
I think we
me.
have
All
a
right,
second.
thank you. If you turn off the, all right, just because I don't know anymore. All right, well.